We just got our first look at the second zombie map in Black Ops 6, Liberty Falls. And we have a lot to talk about. And of course, I want to start off by saying that these are my honest thoughts. These are not influenced by anybody else, and no one's paying me to say anything, obviously. I went into Call of Duty Next blind. I wasn't watching anybody live streaming. I wasn't watching any of the chat. I was just full screen, boom, there you go, reacting to it as I saw it. You can see my full reaction already up on the channel. And here is exactly what I think after marinating it for a little bit. I am genuinely excited to play this map because the gameplay looks really fun, but I would be lying to myself if I said that I wasn't pretty disappointed with what I saw yesterday. I wasn't disappointed with everything. There are things that I'm very much looking forward to, as I said before, but watching the gameplay trailer, watching the gameplay itself, it kind of left me feeling like I wanted more. But overall, it was about what I expected, except it just didn't hit on certain points that Terminus did. And then I went on social media and I got just bombarded with negativity, this sucks, that sucks, how could they do this? This is the worst zombie game ever, oh no. And so what I want to do right now is I want to come at this, I want to approach this topic with as much sincerity, honesty, and authenticity as we possibly can, because I think right now we're in this really volatile state where we have to decide how are we going to communicate with the developers, especially somebody in my position who has a growing sphere of influence, especially with newcomers to zombies. My channel is a lot of Modern Warfare Zombies people, so how I react and how I make this video is gonna, whether I like it or not, influence how people talk online. So I want to come at this from a very respectful, professional, but also very vulnerable and authentic way. So with that in mind, let's talk you through what I was initially disappointed with, because I think I agree with a lot of the things that are being said negatively about the map, but maybe just not to the severity that some other people think so. Watching the gameplay trailer, I was pretty disappointed that we got to see the Mangler again, even though we kind of knew that was already going to be happening. I was like, okay, I'm not super thrilled about it, but you know, it's part of the kill streak. Kind of disappointed to see the Vermin again. I felt like they don't really fit Liberty Falls. I felt as though they fit very beautifully with Terminus. Seeing them here feels a little weird, like they're out of place. And then of course with the mega or the regular abomination at the end, I was just like, oh, they went with a reused boss zombie? That's kind of weird. And of course, like everybody else, as soon as I saw the gameplay, the map itself, while being graphically, the gameplay's over here, so I'm looking over here. It's actually a beautiful map in terms of a video game level. Like I love the greens. I love the kind of sea or lake or river that's going on this one side. The architecture is really good. I love that you can see the church and the water towers in the background. But I agree with the majority of the community when we think that, hey, this doesn't really have the zombies vibe. And of course that's subjective and we'll get back to it. But then to add on top of that, we don't have a set crew. These are just operators again. And also, as I was watching the gameplay, the Pack-a-Punch quest and the Power quest is just opening doors to get to the church to open Pack-a-Punch. And all of these little things, in my opinion, aren't necessarily like make or break for the mode. I still look at the gameplay, I still have fun. I think obviously the Easter eggs were disabled, so I think there's going to be a lot of cool stuff. This has a multi-step main quest according to the blog post, so I'm very excited to see what that's about. I very much like those. But if Treyarch is listening, if a developer's watching this, I really think the way the community responded to this is very important to listen to. And that might be crazy to hear from my mouth because I'm like supposedly Mr. Positivity, even though I feel like I criticize the game just as well as anybody else. But the reason people are so adamant and so passionate and so aggressive with their negative sentiment about this is probably because there is indeed a huge lack of trust between Treyarch and the community. Throughout the past 4 years, with Cold War Zombies, really starting at the tail end of Black Ops 4, but really with Cold War Zombies, with the lack of content, and those maps kind of lacked a lot of personality. They didn't have a set crew. They reused campaign assets and all that stuff. And then Vanguard Zombies probably did the most damage to the relationship between the developer and the community because, oh my goodness, I think we can all agree, I don't know anybody who was like super proud of Vanguard. And I apologize if that's disrespectful or that's over the line, but Vanguard just, in my opinion, really shouldn't have ever been released. I don't think it was fair to the developers to request a zombie mode in 4 months or 5 months, whenever it was. And ultimately, despite Shinonuma Reborn being really one of the best Shinonumas ever, and the Archon being serviceable, it just didn't really pay off. And it really left a gap. It showed that the Zombies team was willing or capable, or Activision forced them to push out a game that wasn't to the standards that we know the zombies developers can put out. And then Modern Warfare 3, a lot of people didn't like it. The post-launch support obviously kind of broken trust there. So there's this broken trust between the developers and the community right now. And despite what we're talking about here, I wholeheartedly believe that Treyarch is doing a phenomenal job at building back that trust, but I want to try and explain why the community seems to be so vitriolic in their hate for this map so far. And so to help me explain it, I literally wrote it out for you. Despite the fairly positive reaction to Cold War during its launch, which believe me, it was very positive during its launch, ever since Cold War has finished its life cycle, there has been 4 major things that people really didn't like about it. The maps had a lack of personality. That's where they were all facilities maps. They didn't have a good atmosphere. The HUD was really convoluted, and there's a lot of stuff popping up with the metals and everything. The pack-a-punch animations and the little tiny details weren't really there. It reused a bunch of assets from the specifically campaign and multiplayer. It did a good job with new bosses and new wonder weapons until it came to the Forsaken and like Marauder Toten, where it reused the Mangler over and over again, or it reused Disciples over and over again. But especially with the campaign here, it really didn't feel all that special. Same thing with the multiplayer side of things and the, well, would have been Blackout 2 side of things with the Outbreak and Onslaught modes, just reusing multiplayer maps like verbatim. There was no set crew, which is a core pillar of what gives a zombie map its personality, its story, and it ties everything together. And finally, they were too easy. They didn't have a lot of difficulty, which made them kind of boring. And also they had boring main quests / boring side quests. Now, obviously, some of these are subjective, and if you love Cold War, then some of these might not be that big of an issue for you, but that was the kind of majority feeling of why Cold War wasn't liked. It was these things that took us a step away from the classic or traditional or normal zombies feeling that we knew and loved from Black Ops 3, Black Ops 4, Black Ops 2, Infinite Warfare, World War II, all that stuff. And when Terminus came out, my goodness, it had atmosphere, it had personality, the HUD was customizable, so hey, that was pretty cool. The Pack-a-Punch still didn't have an animation, but it had little details around the map that made it look really interesting as a map. It was a completely new map, no reused assets, completely new bosses with the vermins and the amalgamations. Yeah, it had the Mangler, but you got the kill streak in there, the parasites, but it's been a while since we've seen parasites. We could forgive that sort of thing. And there's no multiplayer campaign or Warzone crossover in terms of the map that we had ever seen. And it had a set crew. For the first time in like 4 to 6 years, we had a set crew of characters. It's awesome. Terminus is looking great. And then we got a blog post saying, hey, the difficulty is going to be a lot more difficult than Cold War. We're aiming for a hardest high round 100 ever. And there's going to be tons of side quests. It's going to be an awesome main quest that's going to have a guided quest after that. Like, it's going to be fun for everybody. And that was when the whole "we are so back, zombies is so back." That's why everybody was so excited. Liberty Falls, we got Richtof and the Wonderwaff, and then we see gameplay of Liberty Falls and all of these things that we loved and were excited about. Terminus, we see that, oh, well, Liberty Falls doesn't really have a personality. Oh, it's just kind of like that one multiplayer map. Even though it might have been completely built from the ground up for zombies, it feels like that multiplayer map. It's reusing the Wonder Weapon, it's reusing the Jet Gun, it's reusing all the bosses from Cold War zombies, the Manglers, the Abomination. It has the Vermin all over again from Terminus Island. So it doesn't have any map uniqueness in terms of its bosses or its Wonder Weapons. It doesn't have a set crew. And from the gameplay, it looks like, well, there's no Pack-a-Punch quest. You just open the door and there's Pack-a-Punch, and then there's wide open stuff. It feels really easy. People are getting to round 50 on the first day that they played the map. All of these things happening in combination with one another within like a half an hour, 45-minute time period was so overwhelming for the community, clearly. We went from a map that completely erased all of our worries about Cold War and really truly innovated and did try to bring the best of Black Ops 3 and the best of Black Ops 4 and the best of Cold War also into Terminus. And then we have this map which seemingly felt like we were going backwards, and we are terrified of going backwards because, I'll remind you, we're extra sensitive to the trust. We can't trust Treyarch quite yet because, oh my goodness, look at all the things we have, all the proof, the evidence we have in Cold War, Vanguard, Modern Warfare 3. We're very, very nervous. We're in a very fragile, emotional, and sensitive state as a community right now. We need to build back trust in the zombie maps themselves and the developers themselves, and Liberty Falls really didn't do a good job of that. Now, with all of that being said, I think proportionally, the community is freaking out a little bit more than it deserves to. There are things about this map that I'm really excited about. I don't think this map is going to be like one of the worst of all times, but it's because of that sensitivity that we get this sort of overreaction, in my opinion. And this is something that I said a lot of times during the Modern Warfare Zombies DLC season, because, you know, Season 2, we would get less than Season 1. Season 3, we got less than Season 2. Season 4 with the unstable rift. My goodness, every time I said, this is just, again, kind of limiting and breaking the trust of the community, and it's making us more skeptical and nervous to interact with the developers. And so sort of like if you've been in a relationship where you've been cheated on, when you're looking at your new relationships, you might be hypersensitive to tiny little details of, hey, they might be cheating here. Hey, who are they talking to? Hey, what's this? You might be extra sensitive to that, whether or not it's valid, whether or not it's actually happening or real, or you actually need to be worried about it in the first place. And I think as a community, we need to recognize that sensitivity, and we need to, as best as we can, give criticism professionally without making personal attacks on the developers or anybody else conversating about the game. Criticism and honesty is always fine. However, what I've learned from my early adult years to where I'm at now, how you say criticism is very important. I'm gonna share a little personal story with you. Years ago, when I was younger and I was working at my job, I was becoming a leader, and a lot of the time I would see something that I thought was wrong and something that made me upset. I saw an injustice, I saw somebody not being held accountable, or something that I didn't like, and I said, this is wrong, this needs to change, I hate that this has happened, how could you let this happen? And I communicated that very viscerally and very angrily and harshly and unprofessionally. And what would happen is even though I was black and white technically correct on pen and paper, because of the way I went about it, I wasn't taken as seriously. My reaction to the problem became a more important and more pressing concern than the problem itself. And I don't want to see that happen in the zombies community. I don't want our reaction to be so visceral and so loud and negative and toxic that we stop listening to the actual conversation. If you're having a debate with somebody and you're having a polite, very good conversation about a topic you might disagree on, but then all of a sudden that other person starts yelling at you, calling you names, claiming things personally about you, you shut down, you stop listening to them, and you will no longer be convinced. So if we're gonna make any progress, if we're gonna have a good, healthy dialogue between the developers and the community and everybody, we have to take this professionally. We have to talk about this maturely. I'm not saying that I do it all the time. I am just like anybody else on this planet Earth. I'm not a perfect person. I do oftentimes get be a little bit more sarcastic than I should, or say something a little bit more negative than I should to somebody. And I apologize if I've ever said anything to you like that. But that sort of professional mentality is something that I continue to strive for every day. Because in all honesty, Black Ops 6 is still looking pretty darn exciting to me. Remember, we still haven't played this game yet. We're worried about how easy this game is, and of course Liberty Falls has these wide open lanes, but what we also haven't experienced yet is that there are more zombies on the map itself. We might get more than 24 zombies on the map. We might get 40, 50 zombies on the map. So even though it's a really wide open area, when you have 40 zombies coming at you, that's an unconfirmed number. I don't know, I just pulled that number out of nowhere. When there's more zombies running at you, and we've seen more zombies in this gameplay, it looks condensed, it looks close quartered, there are high rounds here, and it looks really, really oppressing. The fact that the armor also costs points now is going to, in my opinion, be a huge dynamic change, because now, instead of pack-a-punching your weapon and using your salvage to increase your armor, you have to choose between the two. Do you want to increase your damage output, or do you want to increase your armor resistance? So that is going to change the way you rank up. And maybe on a map like Liberty Falls, where it's a little bit more open, cool, I'm going to pack a punch my weapon because I've got more space. But then on Terminus Island, where there's a lot less space and the routes and sidewalks and everything are a lot smaller, yeah, I'm going to need some more armor over there. So I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic as we progress and go through Black Ops 6. In Cold War Zombies, every single perk had 6 perks. It had the base perk in 5 different tiers. And in Black Ops 6 Zombies, the tiers are still there, but you can only choose 2 of them per game. So you're naturally going to have fewer and fewer abilities, substantially fewer abilities than you did in Cold War. So that's going to be a little bit harder. Main quests, they've said, are going to be more difficult, more multi-stage. And they can do that because they have the guided quest now. So they listen to us about that. Hey, here's a harder main quest, but also for the new people, here's a guided quest where we can hold your hand through it. That's awesome. The Arsenal Station and the Gobblegum machine have so much more personality. The Arsenal Station talks to you. The Gobblegum has a jingle and a little movie that plays in front of you. That is so cool. And both of these maps have special little traps. You have the comic book trap, you have the Ethereum trap on Liberty Falls, you've got the weird vent trap, and then the huge cannon trap on Terminus Island. It looks really unique. It gives the maps a little bit of personality. Of course, like I said earlier, I'm still pretty disappointed with Liberty Falls and the atmosphere and the reuse of the boss zombies and the no-set crew, totally there. But there are these little beacons of light that we can hold to and go, hey, no, they still got it. They're still trying. And I do want to address, a lot of people said that, hey, this might not be all of what Liberty Falls has to offer. Now, that's obviously the case because all of the side quests were disabled, but a lot of people, and maybe I believe this, I'm not sure, I don't think I do. A lot of people say, hey, this is a limited build, sort of like Ancient Evil was back in the day, because they closed off Easter eggs, meaning that, hey, there's like a whole half of the map that we haven't seen yet. But honestly, I don't think that's the case, because the indicators of where the Pack-a-Punch is were in the game that we saw here. I don't think they would add in those indicators unless that was the final build and the final location and the final Pack-a-Punch quest. After all, when YouTubers went to Terminus, they actually unlocked the Pack-a-Punch through the Pack-a-Punch quest, so why would they not do that here? Well, they would, but the only thing is, this is the final Pack-a-Punch quest, and I don't think that there's anything more to the map outside of the Pack-a-Punch quest. Maybe the boss fight arena, maybe the main quest is going to take us somewhere, kind of like Mauradar Toten in the secret underground thing, but I'm not holding my breath for that. And this whole thing, like, it's crazy to think about. This is a weird thing about it, and really listen to this. This is the most open and vulnerable Treyarch has ever been about zombies ever. We have never gotten zombies at COD Next. Last year with Modern Warfare Zombies, we got a trailer for zombies, and they played it an hour behind closed doors, and we got some gameplay. But that was us 2 weeks ago with Terminus, and they showed full-on zombie gameplay here. Like, we've gotten zombie stuff before the multiplayer stuff. That's nuts. That shows to me that they're confident in zombies, that yeah, you're gonna love what we have in store for you. And again, like I said, in terms of Treyarch building that trust, to me, this has been a huge trust building exercise, and this has meant a lot to me in building that trust because of how much they're showing. They gave us that huge blog post. They explained why this is that, why that's that, and here's this, and here's that. Here's a customizable HUD for you and all this stuff. But I will say, I think they might have shot themselves in the foot here, because when they were describing and hyping up Terminus, they very much said what we discussed earlier with the personality and the set crew, and that was really what felt like their mainstay zombies map for Black Ops 6. But unfortunately, not a lot of people saw Terminus because it didn't have full raw gameplay. It had that edited gameplay with no HUD as well. And that gameplay was given to press. It was given to the press, to YouTubers to put on their own YouTube channels, whereas Call of Duty Next was seen by Warzone players, multiplayer players, zombie players, Call of Duty multiplayer. Everybody saw Call of Duty Next, and this is the map that they showcased to everybody. And so if you missed the whole Terminus advertising, if you missed your favorite zombies YouTuber putting that 16 minutes of gameplay up, then this would be your first sight of Black Ops 6. This would be your first impressions of Black Ops 6. And so people might not understand that the HUD is customizable. People might not understand that there is a set crew for, I think Pizza said there's a set crew for every single zombies map coming forward. I really hope that's the case. And all of this negative feedback, I really do worry that they might never be this open and vulnerable to us ever again. They might just wait till release to show off zombies again. They might not want this huge negative feedback from the hardcore community because this map looks really easy or simple or something like that. I don't know, because just like how Treyarch is trying to earn our trust and extend the olive branch of, hey, we're listening to you versus this, with this, a relationship takes two. So we have a part to play as well in this communication and trust relationship here. If they show us something, they're counting on us to be honest about it, but also trying to be as professional as possible. Because believe it or not, Treyarch has a long history of listening to the community. We might not always get exactly what we want at all times and all of that stuff, but there are a lot of details. There are a lot of things that they listen to the community about throughout the entire, all of these years as well, between Black Ops 4 in response to Black Ops 3's criticism, in Cold War's response to Black Ops 4's criticism, in Vanguard's response to Cold War's criticism, and I could go on. For example, just from what we've seen so far, we have more difficult Easter eggs here, which is something we were begging for. We have a directed mode to help the new player, so it's the best of both worlds. We have more atmosphere on Terminus with unique bosses and a new wonder weapon. We have a save and quit feature, which is something I don't think anybody would have ever guessed that they were going to put in here. They brought back Gobblegums, and they improved Gobblegums, which I don't think anybody was expecting either. We have the armory or weapon kits or whatever you want to call them. The augment system is a more balanced version of the Cold War tier system, which was, believe it or not, a little bit controversial because of how easy it made the game. And we have harder high rounds. At least they're trying to make them harder. And of course, we have a customizable HUD. And believe me, if I find a HUD layout that I love that may not be a specific thing, you betcha I'm going to be talking or making videos talking to the developers about, hey, can we get this HUD layout? Hey, can we get this HUD layout? So while I think Liberty Falls is indeed very disappointing, and I'm really sad of how it kind of revealed itself, the notion that Treyarch just never listens to us, I think, is incredibly silly. Ultimately, if we as the community want to have a healthy relationship with Treyarch, it's going to take two. It's going to take both of us. chaos. And guess what? It's never ever going to be perfect. It's never going to be in a state where this is the perfect zombies map, this is the perfect zombies game, we are done, we found our formula, there you go. There are always going to be zombie maps that appeal to these players more. There's always going to be zombie maps that appeal to these players more. That's the beauty of zombies maps. In Shadows of Evil, and we're not talking about theming or atmosphere or any stuff like that, I'm talking about kind of design choices here. Shadows of Evil is really complex. A lot of people still don't like Shadows of Evil. It's too complicated. Why do I gotta look up a guide? The Giant's way better, or Horizon Highway is way better. The beauty of what makes round-based so amazing is that you could have a map like Shadows of Evil with this flashy, jazzy, like Apothecon heavy thing, and then you go to Zetsubo no Shima, which is this like really muggy and dirty and plant life overrun map, which is also pretty complicated, but in a different way and really oppressing. And then you have Gorod Krovi, which is just this huge bombastic, city map with dragons and flames and fire and all this stuff. The variety of the round-based mode is one of its greatest strengths. And then you go on to World War II Zombies, where it's this like really horror movie-esque, and then you go on to Infinite Warfare Zombies, where it's this like 80s party and it's really lighthearted. The beauty of zombies is that it can encompass so many things. And as we discuss Liberty Falls and as we discuss zombies, I really hope we find a more articulate way of giving criticism other than things like, well, it just feels like multiplayer and oh, it just feels like Warzone. Specifically, those two things I'm gonna call out and say I feel like they're a little bit lazy arguments. Now, they're not invalid. If you feel that way, you feel that way. And like, I'm not gonna say that that's wrong or anything, but I don't think that's helpful feedback. And I'll tell you why here. If the only problem, and I know this is not the only problem, so go with me here. If the only problem with the HUD or the map that it looks like Warzone, then a solution might be, then change the Warzone HUD to be a little bit different. And then bada bing, bada boom, now the zombies map or the zombies HUD is completely different than the Warzone HUD because the Warzone HUD is completely different. So, hey, is that the solution? Well, no, that's not the solution, because the real problem isn't that it feels like Warzone, it's the problem that it doesn't feel like zombies. But then of course, what does zombies feel like? Because as I just stated, it could be a wacky theme park in the 80s, or it could be this horror World War II style of zombie map too, and basically everything in between. Zombies encapsulates a lot more than what you think it does. Again, I'm not defending Liberty Falls. I'm just as disappointed in it as anybody else is. But in terms of trying to give helpful feedback, I'm not entirely sure what I would have preferred. Looking at the map right now, genuinely, it kind of feels like I kind of like this atmosphere a little bit more than like Alpha Omega. I feel like Alpha Omega has just the most bland atmosphere, at least in the overworld. The underground's pretty cool, but the overworld of Alpha Omega is just desert, and I love the trees, I love the hills of this map, I love the little river coming through it. And this is an unpopular opinion, this is gonna roast me in the comments here. I am not a fan of Tag der Toten's atmosphere. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just the pink and the orange are just not my favorite colors or something as stupid as that, but I do not like Tag der Toten's atmosphere. I would prefer this over Alpha Omega and Tag der Toten. I think I'd prefer this easily over D Machine's atmosphere. Now look, I know I'm not ringing off the best atmospheres in zombies right here. I mean, easily 9, Blood of the Dead, Mob of the Dead, Origin, keep naming them. The atmospheres are better, but what makes those atmospheres better? Why is it better? What makes it like a zombie map different than a multiplayer map? It's a very interesting thing to talk about, and I love talking about it, but I think there's a productive way of talking about it. And so Treyarch, if you managed to make it to the end of this video, first of all, thank you. Maybe you should subscribe. But secondly, hopefully I was able to navigate this controversy in a way that made everybody feel validated for their feelings of frustration and upsetness and hurt by this map, but also maybe provided a way to extend an olive branch to the developers or to anybody willing to have a healthy discussion about this game. I was around during Vanguard, I was around during Black Ops 4 specifically, and the community got really, really upset and really, really toxic in my opinion. And as somebody who's growing in this community, I don't want my community to be like that. I don't want my community to be so heated and toxic and making personal threats and personal allegations against developers and all this stuff. I don't want that. I always want this channel to be a place where we can have healthy conversations and debates, even if we disagree with each other in the comment section. And I gotta say, throughout the entirety of Modern Warfare Zombies, you beautiful people have done an excellent job with that. So let's keep that up in the comment section below now. And if you want to see my real, authentic first reaction to Liberty Falls and the whole entire COD Next live stream for Zombies, be sure to check it out right here and stay beautiful.